Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're going to unpack an absolutely monumental event from 1975, the dramatic assassination of King Faisal of Saudi Arabia. We're pulling directly from historical sources, eyewitness accounts, and official records to really objectively understand how a major global geopolitical figure was struck down right inside his own court. We'll be exploring the context, the highly controversial assassin, the swirling theories, and of course, the ultimate findings of the investigation. Let's get into it. Okay, let's dive right in with a single powerful number, 3. That's it. Just 3 bullets. But those 3 shots literally changed the course of Middle Eastern history forever. Think about it. A reigning monarch, a leader who had just completely shaken the foundations of the global economy, was brought down in a matter of seconds. And it was that fatal first bullet, piercing a vein, that did it. You know, what's really wild about this story is how incredibly ordinary that morning started out. Picture this. It's Tuesday, March 25th, 1975, inside the royal court in Riyadh. The king's diwan is just prepping for its usual daily activities. You've got scheduled meetings, dignitaries waiting around, media personnel setting up for a diplomatic reception. It's business as usual. And then absolute chaos erupts in broad daylight, in a room where literally everyone felt completely secure. The whole thing unfolded so fast. The king was simply receiving the Kuwaiti oil minister, along with the Saudi oil minister, Ahmed Zaki Yamani. Then, the king's own nephew, Prince Faisal bin Mased, casually approaches. Naturally, observers just assumed he was stepping up to greet his uncle. But suddenly, he draws a pistol and fires 3 shots at point-blank range. The first hit the king's face, the second his head, and the third missed entirely. The guards wrestled the prince to the ground immediately, but, well, the damage was done. The king succumbed to that fatal first bullet. Section 1, the oil weapon and Palestine. To really grasp the gravity of this, you have to look at his strict geopolitical stance, especially during the 1973 oil embargo. U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger actually visited the king in a remote tent outside Riyadh. Historical accounts say Kissinger jokingly asked for fuel for a stranded plane, offering to pay market price. But the king, he didn't smile. He completely rebuffed him, saying, "We and our ancestors lived on dates and milk, and we will return to them." He was basically reminding the U.S. of Arab endurance, adding that his ultimate personal wish was just to pray in the Al-Aqsa Mosque. If we trace his timeline, you can see this steady, massive escalation. Back in 1963, he took to the UN to declare Palestine the core issue of the region. Fast forward to 1967 at the Khartoum summit, and he's pledging massive financial aid to rebuild after the war. And then, the big one. In 1973, he initiates a total oil embargo against the United States and the West during the October War. This was an absolutely unprecedented move. It sent shockwaves through global markets and sent oil prices skyrocketing. He was also known for these incredibly sharp diplomatic exchanges. For instance, when French President Charles de Gaulle argued that Israel was a reality that just had to be accepted, King Faisal didn't hold back. He offered a really stark analogy. He compared it to Hitler's occupation of Paris, pointing out that de Gaulle didn't just accept that reality, he fought it. And get this, according to memoirs of the politicians who were in the room, that argument actually convinced the French president to cut off arms exports to Israel. Section 2. Who is the assassin prince? So who exactly pulls the trigger on his own uncle? We're talking about Prince Faisal bin Mased, and his documented background is frankly pretty surprising. It's vastly different from the traditional image you'd expect of the royal court. He was young, Western-educated, and he carried a highly controversial personal history that immediately threw up massive red flags for investigators. Check out this profile. He actually studied at UC Berkeley in California and lived what many described as a pretty hedonistic lifestyle. And in 1970, he was arrested in Colorado for selling LSD. Actually, when he returned to Saudi Arabia after that, they seized his passport to prevent any further scandals abroad. Oh, and it gets weirder. The infamous international terrorist, Carlos the Jackal, later claimed to know him and allegedly called the prince a true hero. No way, right? Section 3. Assassination motives. Multiple theories. As you can imagine, the media went into overdrive, spinning up 5 major theories about his motives. 1. CIA or U.S. retaliation for that devastating 73 oil embargo. 2. Israeli incitement, supposedly channeled through his American girlfriend, Christine Surma. 3. Deep ties to the rival al-Rashid family through his mother. 4. Incitement by the sons of the ousted King Saud. And finally, number 5, a deeply personal revenge mission for his older brother, Khalid. At the time, the two most prominent theories really stood in stark contrast to one another. On one hand, you had this grand international conspiracy, Western incitement reacting to the oil embargo. This was even subtly hinted at in a poem by the king's own son. But on the other hand, you had the family vendetta theory. See, the assassin's older brother had led an armed assault on a Saudi TV station back in, well, it was 1965, protesting modern broadcasts, and he was killed by police. A lot of people fully believed the prince was simply avenging his brother's death a full decade later.
Section 4, the investigation and trial.
So how did the authorities handle all this speculation? The new monarch, King Khalid, ordered an exhaustive investigation led by Prince Turki Faisal. It was intense. The probe lasted over 2 months. They coordinated heavily with domestic agencies like General Intelligence and the Interior Ministry, and they even reached out to various foreign intelligence agencies across Europe and the Arab world. They left absolutely no stone unturned. But what's fascinating is the huge gap between public perception and the final report. While the popular media was running wild with ideas of a vast geopolitical or factional conspiracy, the official Saudi findings concluded something entirely different. They determined it was a completely individual act. It was driven by the prince's own mix of personal grievances and radicalized political motives, with absolutely zero foreign involvement. The conclusion of the official investigation was crystal clear. Prince Turki Faisal stated on the record, the act was individual. There was no foreign connection. So, despite all the intense geopolitical tension of that era, the investigators firmly concluded that no foreign hand had guided the assassin's weapon. From there, the timeline of justice moved incredibly swiftly. After the assassination on March 25th and those 2 months of rigorous investigation, the courts made their ruling. Now, initially, there were rumors floating around that the prince was mentally ill, but his American girlfriend actually denied that to the press. Ultimately, the court found him fully responsible for his actions. On June 18th, exactly 82 days after the crime, he was executed by the sword in a public square in Riyadh. Section 5. A lasting legacy after departure. The king's death resonated massively across international borders. Egyptian President Anwar Sadat delivered a deeply moving eulogy right in the Egyptian parliament. He praised the king's unwavering principles, and he said man is but a stance of truth and commitment. He was really highlighting how King Faisal lived his entire life as a true testament to his beliefs. Inside the country, the profound grief was just palpable. It was immortalized by the renowned poet Tahir Zamakhshari. He actually wrote an emotional elegy titled "The Prey is a Nation" on the exact day of the assassination. It was so raw and powerful that it was broadcast live on television that very same day, perfectly capturing the collective heartbreak of a population that felt like they had just lost a father figure. But beyond the grief, you can't ignore that his death undeniably altered the global economy. Historical analyses note that following his passing, that legendary oil weapon was effectively sheathed. The oil pipes were opened back up to full capacity, and prices eventually returned to the normal fluctuations of the international market and the whims of Washington's political landscape. The whole era of using oil as a direct, unified geopolitical weapon had fundamentally shifted. So I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder based on everything we've covered in this explainer today. Considering his immense influence over global energy and regional politics, how different would the landscape of the modern Middle East, and honestly the entire world economy, look today if those 3 bullets had never found their mark on that fateful Tuesday morning in 1975? It really makes you wonder. Thanks so much for joining me to explore this pivotal moment in history.